Hey guys, Tom from the HomeCraftChronicles.com. If you want a great game to play your next tailgate, picnic, barbecue, try Washer Toss. Now this is going to be the first in a series of homemade games that you can build to just enjoy the home living lifestyle. So let's jump right in. Now I decided to make mine as a box that I'm going to split in two later. So I just cut some 2x10 boards at 18 inches with a 45 on each side. Then I cut a rabbet on both sides of the inside dimension that's going to be the inside of the box. This is where I'll put the plywood later. Now this is just the way I did it. You don't have to do it this way. You can use any kind of joint you want. It's just a box. I went with 45s, but even butt joints are going to be fine for this box. And you don't have to cut the rabbet. You can put the plywood right on the bottom and it's going to work out just great for you as well. Next, I just glued up the box together. I'm using some construction adhesive, spread it out, strap the box together, make sure it's square, and then just pre-drill and dry some screws on either side. Now you want to make sure, if you're doing it this way, that you don't drive the screws too close to the middle, because remember, you're going to be cutting this box in two later on, and you don't want the screws to be in the way of the saw blade. When it comes to measuring for plywood for something like this, I don't really like to measure. I think it's much better to just hold the board up and mark it in place. I tend to get a more accurate fit that way. So I just mark one side, cut it, lay it back in, mark the other side, and then cut that. I'm using my straight edge guide here, but a freehand cut's going to be fine, or a table saw, or any kind of saw you have. This is the type of project you can build with very limited tools. And once you have it fitted and everything, don't glue it in just yet. I want you to mark the center by drawing diagonal lines from corner to corner. That's going to give you the center point of the square. And then for the center pipe, I'm using a 4-inch PVC coupler. So I just eyeball it in the center as best I can and trace around the inside and the outside of the pipe. Next, I take a little trim router and I'm going to bore a groove in between those two lines that I traced on the pipe. Again, this is an optional step. I did it because I just wanted a little place where I could set the glue, but you don't have to do that. You could just lay a bead of glue inside the circle that you made and set your pipe in there, and it's going to hold just fine. Now you also have to remember that everything I'm doing twice, because you have to realize that you have two boxes. So I cut two grooves, I fit two pipes, and now I'm just gluing it in place with the same construction adhesive. This is the first time I've ever used Gorilla Glue construction adhesive, and this is not a commercial by any stretch of the imagination, but boy, that stuff works great. There's very little mess. I found it had great holding power. It was easy to work with, and I just think it's a overall really good product. So once I have it glued in, I put the panel in place, and then I just hold it in place with a couple of brads while the glue's drying. That's just so I can keep going. Realistically, you could just clamp this up or weigh it down and it's gonna hold. That construction adhesive is great, and that's all you really need to hold this in place. So, like I said, everything I do twice. So I flip it around, put another bead of glue in that rabbet all the way around, fit the other piece in, and tack it off, and then I can move on to the next step, which is going to be cutting it in half. Now I'm tacking mine in place with an air nailer, but obviously you might not have one, so just a couple little brad nails that you tack in with a hammer are going to be fine. Again, this is just to hold it in place while the glue dries, so I can just move the project along. Now comes splitting the box in two. Now I took a lot of time to set up the table saw, so I made sure I got this exactly in two. I didn't just measure, well I did measure, but once I measured, I got a scrap of the 2x10 that I was using, and I split that in two, and then just made sure I was cutting it exactly in two, because it's a box and you want to have two equal pieces. So I took a couple minutes to set this up, and then I just ran it up on edge on all four sides and split the box right in two, and it worked out great. So like I do the whole way through the project, I just put a couple witness marks on the box so I could keep my orientation. I want this box to fit together well, so I want to make sure it goes together the same way it came apart. And then once I have the tube in, I haven't glued it in yet, but I'm just putting it in place, and I put a straight edge up across the edge of the box so I could mark where to trim my tube at. I want this to be able to close, and if you don't cut the piece of pipe down a little bit, it's going to stand proud of the edge of the box and you won't be able to close it. Now I just cut it on my table saw, but you could cut this with any kind of saw you have really. I fit it back in place, and then I just run the straight edge over the top of the box to make sure it's not standing too proud. And then I just use some more of that same construction adhesive and glue it in place. I found this stuff will hold pretty much anything. So just a little bead in that groove that I cut earlier. Set the piece in place after I make sure there's no burrs or loose things hanging. Set it in place, give it a little twist to spread the glue. And then I just clamp it in place with a good old brick clamp. And then I do the other side. And then comes the sanding. This is going to be a painted project, so you don't have to go crazy with the sanding. I'm just using, I think, some 100 grit here, and all I'm going to do is just get off any burrs, splinters, round over the corners. I don't want any sharp edges here because you're going to be handling this box a lot when you're traveling around, so I just round over the corners, sand up any saw marks or anything else that doesn't look great, and just get it ready for paint. And when it comes to paint, you know, you're only limited by your imagination. I'm gonna go basic black and white, but hey, this is where you go crazy and make it anything you want. As it turns out, my marking wasn't as good as I thought it was, and I did have a little bit of a gap, but I just put some caulk in here, filled it in, and once it's painted, you're hardly gonna notice, and realistically, it doesn't even matter. You could skip this step. So then I just blow out the dust. I had put the compressor away by now, but the leaf blower was handy, so that's what I used. And then I just sprayed the inside with some white spray paint. You just have to spray the edges. You don't have to get in the bottom of the box, because later on we're going to be gluing a piece of carpet or matting in there. So just spray the edges of both boxes. And then on the outside, I figured since this was an outside game and it's gonna be in grass and grime and dirt and stuff, I decided to spray the outside of the box with some of that rubberized coating that you see on TV. And this actually worked really well. A couple of coats, and there's a good, durable plastic type coating on the outside of the box. It's gonna stand up to pretty much anything you can give it. And then at some point, you need to measure and cut out a piece of either outdoor carpeting or matting to put on the bottom of your box. Now I'm putting it in with spray adhesive, and I went crazy and I masked off the whole inside of the box, which don't do it. Just, I found on the second piece, it was easier just after I had it cut and everything, just to spray the underside of the carpet and press it in place that way. I saved myself a lot of time and hassle. And another thing, I used an outdoor mat, but I'm actually gonna have to replace this, because once I started playing, I realized the mat really wasn't cushioning enough, and a lot of times the washers would just bounce right out of the box, so use some outdoor carpet. And then once everything's in place, I just strap together, and I'm gonna attach some cabinet latches just to make the box a box. These are simple, you know, you get them at the regular hardware store. These actually came in a pack of 2, which was great. I just center it up as best I can. You don't have to go crazy. I just basically eyeballed it. Pre-drill your holes and then drive in some screws. On the opposite side of the box, I turn the cabinet latch upside down so that the 2 latches are oriented 180 degrees from each other. I just thought that would make a better fit and a tighter fit on the box. And once the latches are in place, I just get a little gate handle and I screw that in on one of the other 2 sides as close to the middle as I can without getting too far to the middle because you don't want to split the wood. And then I pre-drill it and just screw it in place. And the only other thing you need now are game pieces. So I got some 2.5-inch washers. These are the biggest washers I could find. And I just gave them a little sanding, and make sure you wear dust mask. You see how much stuff flies up. And then 4 washers for each team. You can do 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. And then I just spray them 2 different colors for each team. And again, go as crazy as you want with the colors here. And now it's time to play. Now you put these boxes 21 feet apart on center. And rather than having to measure it every time or try to pace it off, what I did is I just got a piece of cord and I cut it to 21 feet. Well, not exactly 21 feet. Actually, you have to allow for the boxes, so it's like 19.5 feet. And that way you can just measure out the box distances by just putting the cord between the 2 boxes, and you're good to go. Now it's time to play washer toss.
I think washer toss is just one of those games that everybody enjoys. It brings everybody together. Everybody wants to play. If you're at a cookout, a barbecue, at the pool, the beach, or just hanging out in your backyard with friends, this is just one of the games that's going to go a long way to just making that get together a little more fun. And the way I made it, it's basically a game to go. All you have to do, load everything up, put the string back in, put the top on, clip it together, and you're ready to go. So what kind of games do you play with your family and friends when you're out at the beach or the backyard? Let me know in the comments below. I'd like to hear about it. If this is your first time here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss any of the projects here at the HomeCraft Chronicles. And be certain to hit that little bell. That way when something new comes out, you'll be notified. You can check it out right away. That's it for me. I'm gonna go play some washer toss. Until I see you next time, remember, take care of yourself and your home. I'll see you soon.